Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. And you can sometimes find me on Instagram as Mary English or oneword.co.uk, which is my website because somebody stole my name. But there we go. Well, they didn't steal it. They've also got the same name as me, but they got to Instagram before I do. So hello, how are you? Now I've got quite a big episode. We've got lots to pack in, and I'll just give the introduction to why I'm doing this episode. So there I am, as you are, you're on Instagram, you're scrolling, and an advert came up for a device, but the advert wasn't about the device. The advert was a very emotive one. It wasn't very long. It was very much an Instagram advert, and it had this woman, and she was talking about her experience of having a mental health issue. And then she talked about this thing that she stuck on her head, and it apparently brought her out of the depression that she was in. She didn't put it like that, trust me. Nice music in the background, blah, blah, blah. And this device had helped her, and she could now do some housework, which she hadn't been able to do before because she was too depressed. I thought, whatever is this thing? So rather than clicking on the advert, I never do that, otherwise you get more of them, I did some Googling. I'm never going to call it research. Somebody was, hey, research. No, research, you Googled. And there's a company called Flow Neuroscience that makes an electrical device that you plug into the mains, run off batteries, and you pop it onto your head, and it gives you some sort of pulsating thing that goes through your brain. Now, as you know, I work in the alternative, it's not medical, but alternative therapy sector. And I've come across, over the years that I've done this job, 30 plus years, some weird and wacky things in the alternative field. So, you can sit under a pyramid, for instance, and feel the energies of that. I know all the different tapping techniques, that when you move your eyes, EFT, tapping. I'm trained in hypnotherapy. I've seen quite a lot. I'm not saying it all because I haven't. I've seen a lot, and I've come across a lot. And I've also worked with a lot of unhappy people. And what this device offers is a solution that you can do at home for yourself. However, it doesn't come without side effects. Their blurb says that it is a relief for depression without drugs. Okay, implying that drugs are dangerous for you. And who wants to take drugs? Who wants to take drugs? Young people don't want to take drugs unless they take illicit drugs. So this is what this episode's about. It's not specifically about this flow neuroscience thing. It's about the principles that must have triggered it for the person that decided to invent it. We'll come on to his invention later, because we need to backtrack a bit. We need to backtrack to the treatment that people have had for mental health issues since the year dot. Now, way back in the day, if you had, I can't remember what condition you might have had, but they did a thing called lobotomy, where they basically chopped out part of your brain. And in the world of psychiatry, there comes the most barbaric forms of treatment for people's mental illness. And I use that word barbaric quite happily, because some of the treatment especially is. And also, being mentally ill in any way has legal implications to it. In the UK where I live, there are various different laws that you can be held in treatment for. They're called sections, and a mental health professional, and it needs to be at least 2 of them, can determine that your liberty is removed and you need to receive treatment without your permission or your consent. Anyway, don't get me into all of that. And just for background information, I have a lot of experience in my work. I've had friends and relatives, close relatives and close-ish friends that have suffered from mental health disorders over the years. I'm in my 60s, come across quite a lot, especially since working, and I also was a volunteer in a mental health hospital in London that doesn't exist anymore, but it used to have the longest corridors ever for a mental health institution. I think it's flats now. Anyway, that was when I was in my 20s. So I volunteered in this particular mental psychiatric hospital, it was called then. So we're talking today about ECT, Electro Convulsive Therapy. So this was this brilliant idea that somebody had somewhere, that shoveling a load of electrical whatevers through your brain and inducing a fit in you would make you, inverted commas, better and stop you suffering from whatever it is that you might be suffering from. So we're going to do a little bit of history today. We're going to do the charts of the person, inverted commas, that invented ECT, and the person prior to him that decided that having a seizure, was a great idea. Let's induce seizures into people that are manically depressed, or even depressed. Okay, so we're going to look at their two charts, and then we're going to look at this guy that's invented this device. And I have I've got the month and the year of birth, so we can explore that. Because my question always is, when somebody's developing some treatment of some sort, what's going on for them whilst they are developing this idea? Because if we think of people like Sigmund Freud, for instance, who actually started life originally was very into hypnotherapy, and then decided that that wasn't the thing for him, because back in the day when they did hypnotherapy on people, they made it very dramatic. They had women sort of fainting all over the place and putting them into, not putting, because you can't put anybody into anything, but having power over people and making them go, and anyway, don't get me started on that one. But Sigmund Freud was very respected, did his thing. He had a Pluto thing going on and a Scorpio thing going on in his chart. So we're going to explore today electroconvulsive therapy, inverted commas, as a treatment for people that are mentally unwell. There's no other form of treatment where you would have electricity passed through your body, okay, for any other illness, okay, other than you've had a heart attack, and they'll put, if you've ever had first aid training, you get these little things that you stick onto the person's chest, and then you press a button, and some electricity, it is electricity, will go through the person's heart and restart it, okay, but they're basically dying. This is not the same. Having electricity pass through your brain isn't natural. Let me don't get me started. I always get cross about it. So let's start. Now, you know, I've got a love-hate relationship with Wikipedia. I think it's marvellous the amount of people that contribute to it. I also think it's a terrible site for the way that women are treated, and the arguments that people have on there. But it's good in a way, because now you can get a lot of information, but always with Wikipedia you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because the information that's on there has to be got from somewhere else, and where is that got place? So when we're looking at the history of electroconvulsive therapy, I'm not going to read you the Wikipedia page for that, because on the scale of 1 to 10, the depressing scale is rates about 500. But we're going to look at the two people that were the instigators of it. So not the man that invented it himself. This is a guy called Ladislas J. Meduna, and his proper job was a neuropathologist and neuropsychiatrist who initiated convulsive treatment, the repeated induction of grand mal seizures as a treatment of psychosis. Now, psychosis is a mental health disorder where the person's basically not on the planet. They've disconfabulated themselves, and they're not in the world that you and I might be in. It's a pretty awful place for the person to be. It's pretty difficult for friends or relatives to witness it either. So it's it's a very acute mental health disorder. However, it doesn't happen overnight. Anyway, this bloke he was born in Budapest in Hungary. He was appointed to the Institute of Brain Research because he studied medicine in Budapest from 1914 to 1921. His services were interrupted his studies were interrupted by military service in the Italian front from 1915 to 1918. So he studied neuropathology and the structure and development of the pineal gland. Anyway, it says induction of seizures. Meduna's interest in treating schizophrenia, okay, so this is his treatment of schizophrenia, began with observations that the concentration of brain glia varied among patients who died with epilepsy, more glia than normal, and those with schizophrenia, less glia than normal. He thought that the inductions of seizures in patients with schizophrenia would increase the concentration of glia and relieve the illness. Okay, so he put 2 and 2 together. He saw that in the people that had died from schizophrenia, that there was a different amount of this gear in their brains than people who didn't die of epilepsy, who died of epilepsy. So he's comparing people with schizophrenia to people with epilepsy. There's no control group there that he's comparing people that have got dementia, Alzheimer's, or have died, I don't know, smoking too much or something. But anyway. And then this is the bit that this may be really cross. It said the concept was supported by reports that the incidence of epilepsy in hospitalised patients with schizophrenia was extremely low, and a few schizophrenic patients who developed seizures after infection or head trauma were relieved of their psychosis. Okay. So then 2 and 2 together, let's make 500. So these people, they got this schizophrenia, let's make them have some epileptic fits. Now, I went to school with a girl who had epilepsy. This is one of the American International School of Zurich, and she had a thing called petit mal. She'd be talking to all of a sudden, she'd get totally quiet for just a heartbeat. She'd just stop mid-sentence, and then she'd carry on. And that was how her epilepsy manifested. Now, she would have been 14 at the time. I don't know where she is now, how it progressed or whatever. But there's different with everything. With any illness, there's always a spectrum of it. You can have people that are very little bits of epilepsy, and you can have people that are falling over and going into comas constantly. Anyway, so it then says he sought ways to induce seizures in animals with chemicals, because he's doing his research now. God, I don't know who allowed him to do it. And he used alkaloids, strychnine, chloramine, caffeine, and then he settled on camphor dissolved in oil as an effective and reliable treatment. Now, this is the next bit. For a population with severe schizophrenia, he moved from Budapest to the psychiatric hospital in Lipto outside Budapest, and he began his dose-finding experiments on January the 2nd, 1934. So let's look at this man himself. Let's have a little look at his chart. What's going on for him that he even wants to do this type of work? And also, what's going on for him when he decides to have this first experiment with someone, does the first treatment? Because you've got to sort of have some sort of weird way of looking at the world that you're going to want to work with. Now, he hasn't got this idea that he hasn't come from a place of peace that he wants to, like, I'm not going to use the Dalai Lama as a good example because he's a bit weird, but Thich Nhat Hanh, can I pronounce his name properly? Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He hadn't got this idea, let's alleviate people's suffering. He's not coming from a place of compassion. He's trained in something, got interested, doing a rather bloke type thing, now wants to experiment with this lovely idea on some real people. So who would even want to do that? Yeah, because there's risks involved with this. So we've got his date of birth, hurrah, 27th of March 1896. This is a hell of a long time ago. And he's an Aries. I'm going to go off and do stuff. Now, I've used whole sign. I've done 6 a.m. Why not? And that's the only Aries planet in his chart. He has Moon in Virgo. Okay, so people with Moon in Virgo can worry. They can worry for a living if they're not careful. And he's got 2 Pisces planets, Mercury in Pisces and Venus in Pisces. Now, we have to put a codicil here that if we're talking about an Aries, Dun, 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 get out there and do it. And then their thinking planet is in Pisces. You can guarantee they will have some sort of magical thinking going on. Mercury in Pisces can think magic. Okay. And Mercury and the moon are in opposition. So the moon is how I feel and Mercury is how I think. They're on the opposite side of the table, as I talked about a few weeks back in the opposition podcast. He's got Uranus and Saturn retrograde in a water sign, and the only fire in his chart is his sun sign. Okay, now I've got no idea what his ascendant is, because the ascendant would be the motivator for doing quite a lot. He's got Pluto and Neptune conjunct, cool, as outer planets. You know, he's got two outer planets conjunct, because Uranus is conjunct Saturn, retrograde in Scorpio. He's got Mars in Aquarius, so that's where he gets his energy from. Weird stuff. And he's got Jupiter in Cancer, but it's the moon in Virgo that we need to pay attention to. Okay, so that's his date of birth, 27th of March 1896. So now we've got the date of his first experiment, and I've got the 2nd of January 1934. Let me just triple check that's the actual date, and I haven't. Induction assist. Yes, he starts his experiments. So that's the nice thing when you read, and you're inverted commas researching, you're googling, you want to, and you're me, and you get a date. Yeah, a date will tell you something, because then we can look at the transits. Now, going back to Ladislas's chart, he has got a lot of oppositions, and he's got a hell of a lot of squares. His moon squares is Neptune, his moon squares is Pluto. Okay, so you need to have a little bit of understanding of and he's got his Neptune conjunct his Pluto, so that generation of people born in the 1800s, late 1800s, will have that as well. So Neptune's all about connection to the divine, and Pluto's about deep change and transformation. So what was going on for him when he started his experiments? Oh, let's go and induce some seizures in people and see if it cures their whatever it is they've got. Remembering, of course, that when anybody's involved in research, when they start their research, they're going to look for what they want, because you're not going to look for what you don't want. What would be the point in doing the research? I'm talking about his research now, not my Googling. So there he is. He's got this great idea that this will fix everything for everybody. We'll just make them have a seizure and that's it. They'll recover. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. That's quite Aries. Get out there and do it. But just because when you start your research that you get the results that you want, you've got to have, you know, the way they do research now for medical whatevers, you've got to have a vast amount of people. Medical research, there's loads of people that they give the gear to, and then they've got to prove that it wasn't placebo, because they've got to give a load of dummy pills to the people that are in part of the trial. But even being part of a trial involves a certain commitment to the person themselves. Now think of every bit of research that's ever happened. Someone has to get a piece of paper and tick a box and say, oh, I'm quite happy to be experimented on. Okay, unless you're a psychiatric patient, because then consent doesn't come into it. It never did then, and it still doesn't now. But anyway, so what's going on for him when all of this happens? And this is where like alarm bells are going off for me. Look at his moon there, 8 degrees into the sign of Virgo. It could be a further degree, we don't know what time of day he's born. But Neptune is now retrograding on that date and is in the sign of Virgo. So when he was born, it was in Gemini. It's now square to where it was when he was born. And boom, he gets this wonderful idea. Okay, now are you going to trust someone who's got Neptune conjuncting their moon? Are you going to trust them with your whole health? You might trust them to write a fantasy. You might even trust them to, I don't know, create something artistically beautiful for you. But are you going to trust them with your brain cells and your body? Hello. Anyway, Neptune's transiting his moon. Uranus has been transiting through the sign of Aries. So when he was born, it was in Scorpio. So he's getting into his professional career. So he would have had earlier to this, probably when he first started his studying, Uranus transiting past his sun sign. And again, I have to ask the question, we're talking about mental health here. Do you really want to be working with someone that's just recovered from and come out of a lengthy Uranus transit, are they themselves going to be especially rational? We're looking at now a person needing to be rational. And not only is transiting Neptune near to his moon, wherever his moon is, but it's somewhere into Virgo, it's directly opposition is Mercury. Oops! Okay, so he's deluded. But unfortunately, because he's talking about people that are equally deluded, he's coming across as, oh, I'm going to fix this. Okay. So he gets famous and he does other things and he publishes his research. Oh, and then he decides to use carbon dioxide therapy with his patients and making them breathe in a mixture of 30% carbon dioxide and 70% oxygen, designed to provoke powerful feelings of suffocation, quickly triggering an unresponsive yet intense altered mental state. Now, I'm very critical of the guy that makes people, doesn't make them, sorry, rephrase that. There's a man who recovered from his own mental health issues by immersing himself into ice. And he's probably built to be able to do that. He's a pretty chunky chap. But I did read a while ago about a lady who did that and had a heart attack and died. So, anyway, he carries on doing this, and it says here, the treatment, while usually unpleasant or even terrifying, proved very useful for revealing previously unconscious fears. Fear of death, maybe. Challenging experiences on carbogen prepared patients for later psychedelic therapy in a profound way. It was not as effective as convulsive therapy in relieving the symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder and was therefore abandoned. Oh, what a surprise. So when you investigate the world of mental illness, remember that the people that are working in it probably are as equally bonkers as the person who might be suffering from whatever it is themselves. Okay, so the person that treats or looks after the person with a mental illness of some sort, it's a group. They need a group to be able to help. I'll come into recovery later, but anyway, so that's your man, Ladislas Meduna. Okay, because I'm talking about the history of how it eventually got here into the UK, because there's a nice Wikipedia page called The History of ECT. Hurrah! Now, Ugo Cerletti was born on the 26th September 1877, was an Italian neurologist who discovered, get him, the method of electroconvulsive therapy used in psychiatry. And it says here, electroconvulsive therapy is the therapy in which electric current is used to provoke a seizure for a short duration. This therapy is used in an attempt, see, that's the word, attempt, to treat certain mental disorders, and may be useful when other possible treatments have not or cannot cure the person of the mental disorder. Okay? Anyway, so he's born, he does his thing, he lives in Italy. We'll look at his natal chart in a second. How did he even get to this idea? Now, this is where I nearly lost it reading this. Okay, so it says the idea to use ECT in humans first came to Cerletti from watching pigs being anaesthetised with electroshock before being butchered. The story goes that he was on his way home and he stopped at a butcher's shop. The shop didn't have the cut of meat that he wanted, and he was told to walk back to the slaughterhouse behind the shop to have his cut made for him. At that slaughterhouse, the technique used for butchering cattle involved an electric shock to their heads. This would cause the cattle to go into seizures and fall down, making it easy to slit their throats. In that time period, people believed that seizures were essential in preventing schizophrenia, since many believed that those diagnosed with epilepsy were immune to the disorder. Cerletti reasoned, this is the mind of the person, putting one and one together and making 500. Cerletti reasoned that electric shock might be useful in humans as a treatment for schizophrenia. Okay. Now, excuse me, but have you ever been to a slaughterhouse? I haven't. I do live near, there used to be one near us, and I used to drive past it, and the smell from there was horrendous, because obviously they'd clean all the I don't know what, cells out, and it all go down the drains, and there was an open drain. It's not there anymore. The place closed down. I've been living here for quite a long time. The place closed down, and they closed it down, knocked it down, and built a block of flats there. Nothing would possess me to want to live there. It's be like living on a graveyard. Don't forget I'm a vegan, okay? But if you're in a slaughterhouse, what sort of mind have you got that you're going to put those things together and then apply that to helping people? There's no word, the help doesn't come up there, by the way. Oh, that would be a good thing to experiment with. And there's a picture on the Wikipedia page of his, Ugo Cerletti, the first electroconvulsive machine that he had. And you look at that and you look, that is barbaric. Why don't you just plug the person into the mains? There's not much difference. But anyway, so let's have a look at his chart. So this is the man. He lives in Italy. He's born there. He has a lovely life. I'm sure he had loads of friends. He trains in... What's he training in? Hold on, let me go back. He's training in... does he study medicine? Yeah, he studied medicine. Okay. He mostly focused on common issues in the fields of histology and histopathology, and he demonstrated how nervous tissue reacts to different stimulants. God, blimey, I'd say electricity was a stimulant. Anyway, so he's a sun sign Libra. He's got Mercury retrograde in Libra. And then you look at the other side of the chart. He's got Moon conjunct Neptune and Moon conjunct Pluto. His Moon is basically, now I haven't got a time of day because that Moon can move a bit forwards or backwards either, but I've done 6 a.m. and that's made his Moon sandwiched between his Pluto and his Neptune and his Chiron. The time of day wouldn't affect the Chiron. It's like, oh, we've got another Neptune thing going, except this guy's born with it, okay? And I'm sure he's a nice chap. He's a Libra. They're very friendly. They're as a sign of the zodiac, they're nice people. I'm not saying that Ladislas, not a nice chap, he's an Aries. But we have to look at why do people do things and when is it they do it. So with him, we've got the first. So that's him getting his idea. Cerletti first used ECT in a human patient diagnosed schizophrenic with delusions, hallucinations and confusion in April 1938 in collaboration with some other bloke called Lucio Bini. A series of electroshocks were able to return the patient to a normal state of mind. This experiment indicated that electric shock treatment may hold potential to improve the conditions of patients diagnosed with specific diseases, plural. Electric shock treatment quickly replaced insulin and metrazole as the favourite form of shock treatment. They used to put people into diabetic comas, basically. Now I've got insulin-dependent diabetes. I can't think of anything more horrific. I've had a few hypers than being forcibly put into it. And in fact, that's how that nurse, whose name I can't remember, but it'll come to me in a minute, I did a podcast on her, that's how she killed her little baby patients. So Ugo, when does he do his first experiment? Here we go. Let's just, oopsie. So I've called this first treatment, beg your pardon, not experiment, it's a treatment. So he's treating the person, he's plugging him in, he's putting this electrode on his head, blum, 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 amount of electricity goes through the body. If you really want to scare yourself, you can go to YouTube and you can watch black and white videos of people in mental hospitals having ECT treatment in I think it's the 1940s or 50s. And you can see them lying in the beds and the nurse doing this and the thing going on the reds, and they go, and then they go, ooh, like that, and then, ooh, that's it, they're fixed. But anyway, so what goes on for him in his first experiment? So we already know that he's got an outer planetary thing near his moon. So his moon is used to, so his feeling side of himself is used to being scared out of its pants. This experiment, and I Yeah, what date did I use? I used the 2nd of April, yes, because we got the exact date. 2nd of April 1938. Mars and Uranus are exactly conjunct to his moon, which is conjunct his Pluto and his Neptune. So this is another person where an outer planet has gone to something into their chart. Now, plenty of people can have that in their charts and they don't get famous, they don't make loads of money, and they don't start a new form of treatment that people are still using hundreds of flipping years later that's ineffective. In my view, that's my personal view. So on that date, I think Mercury is 0 degrees Taurus and his Chiron is 3 degrees Taurus. So, wow. Neptune's opposition to his natal, so transiting Neptune's in Virgo, and his opposition to his natal Mars and Saturn in Pisces. So for those of you that don't see the show notes, so I'll just read you his chart. His Sun Libra, Moon Taurus, Mercury Libra, Venus Scorpio, Mars Pisces, Jupiter Sagittarius, Saturn Pisces, Uranus Leo, Neptune Taurus, Pluto Taurus. Now Uranus has already done a whole circuit since he was born, because I've got Uranus in Leo. Bottom. So this is the generation that was born with Uranus in Leo, prior generation. Uranus doesn't actually do much in his chart, but the Pluto's pretty near to his moon, because we don't know exactly what time of day he's born, but the moon's going to be in Taurus, whatever. And oh yes, and Uranus is transiting through Taurus, which is what it's doing at the moment. Maybe that's why I've hit on that. I don't know, maybe I'm being influenced by it, because that's where it is at the minute. So there's his bright idea, which then translates and comes over to the UK, and everybody thinks it's marvellous. So watch those old videos. If you really want to scare yourself, don't watch them late at night. But they are on there, and they're horrific, because the person has to give consent. How can you give consent to something that you don't understand? And I have met people, okay, I'm very old, I've met people that have had ECT. In fact, I know someone at the moment that's had it, and it has severely affected their memory. Okay, and I cannot believe that. I can't believe, because we live in a weird world, that now what's the numbers? Oh, it's, how many people is it a year? Yes, so it's first used in the UK in 1939, and still there are 11,000 people a year that are subjected to being plugged into the mains. Oh, and they'll tell you all this, we give you a muscle relaxant and we give you a painkiller, and no, that's not kind, that isn't gentle, it isn't helpful, and it's like scaring the pants out of someone and hoping that will fix them. Anyway, fast forward to today and this flow neuroscience thing. Now, apparently, there are 2 different forms of this type of treatment now that you can, one you can do at home and the other you can't. You can do this flow neuroscience thing at home, plug this thing in your head and pulsy bits of electricity, but not electricity, but a bit like, it's bigger than TENS. You've heard of TENS machines, they're used for pain relief. And they send a sort of, do you need electricity? Because you have batteries on these things. They send a sort of little vibe through your body. But this is in your head. And this mistaken idea that to cure a mental illness, we need to do something to your brain, doesn't take into account your psyche, the who you are. And I think it was Oprah Winfrey that said, if you want to help someone that has a problem at the moment, ask them, what happened to you? Not what's wrong with you or what diagnosis you've got or what's going on now, but what happened to you? Because you possibly were chugging along in your life and everything was fine until boom, something happened. Now, if you're a mutable sign, you're going to remember it forever. You're going to go back to it constantly. If you're a fixed sign, you might have waves of it. If you're a cardinal sign, you're going to want to move away from it. When treating people, do I treat people? When working with clients, if there's mutable stuff going on, I will try and resolve that. What happened to you? what was it? Because until and unless that's soothed and made better and cared for, recovery is more tricky. But to believe that sticking an electrode device on your head and plugging it into the mains and going blip, blip, blip into your mind will somehow fix the disorder that isn't based in your brain. Mental illness isn't in your brain. Mental illness is not even in your body, it's in your psyche. I don't know how to explain it. Email me. Phone me up. I'll talk about it a bit more. So this chappie, there's two different methods. One is this one, which is called flow neuroscience. The other one, I think it's called TSI, and that's putting magnets on your brain. Okay, magnets in your brain, and that treatment you have to go to a therapist that's trained in it. You cannot do that at home. This man is marketing this device that you can do this in the comfort of your own home. Okay, now remember, of course, the thing that drove me wild about this, when it comes to depression, because that's what they're aiming at, people that are depressed, there are spectrums of depression. I saw a lady once that was so depressed, quite a lot of it was the side effects of the medication she was on, but she could barely walk. Okay, her ability to walk was so reduced, she could barely do it. Possibly it was the drugs that didn't help either. And always, when we're considering a mental health issue, what happened to you? How can we make that better? Now, how can we collaborate together, you and me, to be able to make this better? Not me in a white coat and with a stethoscope round my neck going, oh, I think in my professional opinion, blah, blah, blah should happen. It does need to be with the person's consent, unless they cannot consent because they're so sick. Then they need to be cared for somewhere quiet, nice food, exercise. But not all of these types of things. And there's no way that we can change mental health treatment to doing that. It'd cost a flipping fortune. It's much easier for them to have everybody in hospitals or lying in little beds and filling them full of drugs and stuff and then kicking them out after a while. Anyway, he's called Daniel Mansson. Where's his chart gone? I've stuck it on my desktop now, I've lost it. First, oh, here we go. Right, so this is the guy that's the CEO of the company. There's two people that got the idea. So again, I'm going to give you an introduction. Why did this bloke even decide to do this? Okay, and the evidence is there to see, because none of this is hidden. This is all available if you know how to Google. So on his LinkedIn page, it says that he originally... Oh, so hold on, let me just find his education now. So now these other fellas had studied medicine, okay? They'd studied medicine and had been through the system. This chap who's selling this device that you plug your brain into, I can't even see where he got his degree. I'd have to go back to I can't be bothered. He was... First of all, his first job in 2008 was as an architect. Okay. Then he was a research assistant at the Department of Computational Biology from Feb 2012 to June 2012. So he did 5 months of that. Then he became a clinical psychologist. So we're going from 2012 and we're now 2014. This is June. So he must have spent 2 years training to be a clinical psychologist. I can't remember what his degrees were, if he had any, but there's quite a lot of computational stuff, so he's into his computing. So it says here, clinical psychologist from June 2014 to October 2015. That was 1 year and 5 months that he was in clinical practice, supervision, who knows, as a psychologist. And then in December 2015, he's now the founder of this company and this machine. So how many patients could he possibly have seen in less than a year of working with ill people? Okay, he's gone He's sharply turned away from working with, which is what I do, I work with the general public every flipping day of the week, except Sundays, which is today. How did he make, there's some word for it. Anyway, a big swerve from working with people to having this brilliant idea, this brilliant machine. What experience has he of people that aren't well and how they recover and how they get to a place of recovery? He can't have done in less than a year. It's absolutely impossible. Because I've been working in private practice for so long now, I'm working with the children of people that I started working with. So I can safely say that I have a vague idea, more than this man, about how people recover and what recovery is all about. Because sometimes people don't. They don't get the help, or they haven't got the internal capacity to recover. For whatever reason, we might never know. And there's no judgment. So this chap gets this device. So I've got the date and I've got the year that he's born. So he's born in July 1984. And I just thought, and that's just me on Astrological. I thought I'll just do the 6th of July. I know it's July because he's born in July 84, because when you register your company on Companies House, your date of birth has to be in the original document called, I can't remember what they call it now, but when they set the company up, the original document that is to be registered at Companies House has to have your date of birth on. Nowadays, they block out the actual month date. So they just say the month and the year. They don't say what date it is in the month. But you still can get a vague idea because you want to find about outer planets, etc. And also, because this is the month, you're going to know what sign of the zodiac they are. Okay. So I've done the 6th of July, just for a guess. And we've got Pluto in Libra and the moon's in Libra. Now, I don't know, please, don't judge me on this. I don't know if that's actually the case, but I could make a very big argument for what he's doing or what he's done, and it possibly he's got Moon in Scorpio, because it's a bit difficult. I couldn't even find his happy birthday to you on social media, which sometimes happens. That's another way. When you've got the Companies House month of birth and year of birth, you can sometimes find the date by, they'll say on their social media, or their friends will say to them, happy birthday to them. Most people celebrate their birthdays. Couldn't find that with him. Might be because he's in Sweden. So what else have we got? So we've 99% sure got the sun that's in Cancer. If it's later in July, because he's born in July, he could be a Leo. Okay. Mercury's in Cancer and it's 29 degrees. That could quickly have gone into Leo. Okay, we don't know. No idea. But I really wouldn't think that he was a Leo. Not judging by, there isn't even a video of him anywhere being interviewed by anybody. He's quite secretive. Because the internet can throw up quite a lot when you search. So he's got, now these things are definites, Venus in Cancer, Mars in Scorpio, Jupiter in Capricorn, Saturn in Scorpio, Uranus Saggy, Neptune Saggy, and Pluto 29 degrees Libra. They ain't going to change that month. Mars isn't going to change sign. No, none of those are going to change. And Venus won't either. That'll take you right to the end of the month. Mercury's just about to shift, and obviously the Sun and Moon can alter. Personally, I think it's Cancer, but unless I'm proved otherwise. So I've got the date that the company was formed in the UK. It was the 4th of February 2022. So I got that information there. So what was going on for him? Oh, look at that. The Moon and Neptune are conjunct. Now, really, would you want to start a company unless you're an artist or something creative? But don't mess about with people's brains when the Moon and Neptune are conjunct. Uranus is in Taurus, opposition to his Saturn and Mars. Direct opposition, by the way. Venus and Mars are conjunct his natal Jupiter. Mercury's retrograde. Is that right? Yes. So Mercury's retrograde on the date that he does his thing. Natally, he's got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto retrograde. I just used them for last week's episode. Everybody with loads of outer planets retrograde. It would be a classic example. But yeah, we've got the Moon and Jupiter. So Jupiter, Moon, Neptune are all in Pisces, and the Moon is conjunct to Neptune, and the date he starts a company up in the UK. He started up a bit earlier in Sweden. So that's this chappie now and what he gets up to. And the point I'm making today is that when it comes to mental illness and the treatment for it and the care for it, you get better care having cancer, actually, especially in Bath. There's a guy, Dyson, his name is, and he invented one of the Hoovers, vacuum cleaner things. He's a multi-millionaire, and he funded a cancer department in our local hospital, massive building, blah blah blah, all this, that and the other. The mental health unit at our local hospital is at the back of the hospital. It's stuck behind a wall. The building's falling apart. I only know about this because a friend of mine's friend was a patient there for a considerable amount of time, and she had ECT, and she ended up with headaches and memory loss, and her life wasn't helped by it. But you're better off having cancer. You'll get better treatment than if you have a mental illness. To help somebody with mental illness takes a team of people. It's much more difficult to do it yourself. There are plenty of people that have recovered from mental illness themselves, but they've done the inverted commas accepted things, that they've taken exercise, they've been with other people. You cannot cure yourself for depression on your own by sitting at home and having a device on your head. You need to be with other people. You need to be taking exercise. You need to be eating a healthy diet. Absolutely. You need to reduce your stress levels down to 0 as much as you can. Adopt a pet. Sometimes that helps. But it's the eating healthily, taking exercise, looking up at the sky, listening to music, all gentle things, not watching the news, reading books that are optimistic, and caring for yourself, and also having some consideration for what happened to you and doing as much as you can to fix that. But going to extremes, chucking yourself into freezing cold water, or subjecting other people to the things that might have worked for you because it worked for you, doesn't mean it will work for someone else. And none of these people, not one of them, has suffered from the things that they're helping supposedly other people for. This man hasn't said, oh, I had a really, really bad depression and I've put some electrodes on my head and now I came out of it. Not at all. Him and another man developed the company. They've tried to make it so that you can do this at home. Now, other things like that have worked. So there was a bunch of people developed a monitoring device. I've got one, monitoring device for diabetes that you can stick on your arm, and it gives you a vague idea of where your blood sugars are, so you don't have to keep pricking your fingers. That's a brilliant device, and it is an easy thing to use at home. You can't kill yourself with it, and there aren't too many side effects other than bruising, and not having electricity, because all of these things you need electricity to be able to operate them. But to stick electrodes on your head and have the idea that mental illness is something to do with your brain is, in my professional opinion. So I hope you have a fab week. I'll be back next week. Let me know your thoughts, your experience on this matter, and I'll be back next week. Bye bye now.